As a young boy, I was always fascinated by science, and the thing is that I always like to see how things work. It's my intrinsic thing that everything that I see around me, being alive or not, I'm very interested on how it works. So I always was interested in the field of science. That's it, biology, chemistry, and physics. But my main subjects were chemistry and biology. As well, from a young age, I was fascinated on how the grapes are converted into wine. I remember my father doing some wine of his own, and that thing fascinated me on how from must it fermented and ended up being a completely different product. So when I took the science subjects, I always had in mind of working in a field where you can apply science to the actual work. I hadn't really in mind that I would be eventually a winemaker, but that was one of the thoughts. What happened was that when I started my university at studying pharmacy, an opportunity had come up in the field of winemaking. Wine was always my passion, so it was really an opportunity that I couldn't let go. And I started working with this company as a technician in a laboratory, doing routine analysis of grapes, wines, and the fermentation process and everything that goes along with it. During the years, I studied on my own using research, textbooks on winemaking. I always had help from the enologist of the previous company that I worked with. And in this company that I work with now, we have a consultant enologist who is from Sicily, which we communicate a lot, and I get many research material from him, so I continue to develop myself in this field of winemaking. So this is the fermentation tank area. Basically, after we have done all the analysis and necessary quality checks on our vineyards, we determine the harvest date by taking samples of different vineyards. We press the grapes, we check for sugar, natural sugar, we check the pH, we check the acidity and the visual quality of the grapes, and then we determine the harvest date. During harvest, we do different monitoring and analysis. We start by pressing the grapes. There's a whole flow of system, and the pressed must ends up in these fermentation tanks. We take samples as well over here. We check, for example, for the nitrogen requirement for the yeast to ferment, because the yeast need nitrogen to ferment, and other nutrients. During fermentation, on a daily basis, we actually come and check the process by taking a sample from each vat and smelling the wine and tasting the wine, taking the density, because from the density you are measuring how much sugar is being converted to alcohol, because the fermentation is temperature controlled. So we meant to make sure that the fermentation takes as long as we want it to, and we measure that by doing daily analysis of the density of each fermenting vat.
One of the main food that the vines need is nitrogen. Now we can apply nitrogen to the vines either by using inorganic chemicals like nitrates, or we can do it naturally by planting in the pots here, sowing in the pots, legumes like beans and so on, or clover. So in October, middle of October, when the soil is still wet, fairly moist, we sow the beans in the middle here, alternate pots, and what happens is that the legumes have a bacteria, soil bacteria, which lives on the roots, and you have what we call a symbiosis. The bacteria needs the legume to live, and the legume needs the bacteria to get its nitrogen. Now this bacteria, what it does is it's getting the nitrogen from the air and nitrifying it into a nitrate, a form of nitrogen which is soluble to the plant. And you finish up with having these legumes with a lot of nodules on the roots. And these nodules are full of bacteria and nitrogen. Now when the crop is in flower, we come and rotovate and destroy the crop, and we are finished with a lot of these nodules in the soil. Now the roots of the vines, which are everywhere, will pick up this natural nitrogen. And this is a form of how to apply nitrogen in a natural way. We are seeing here, this vine is actually two vines. Here we have what we call the graft. We have the European variety, in this case it's Chardonnay, which is grafted, it's like welded on the American rootstock, which is providing the root system. We do this because in the 1860 a terrible pest from America called phylloxera was imported on some planting material, and this pest will burrow down in the soil and it will eat the roots. Now naturally, because the American vines lived for thousands and thousands of years with this pest, the American vine has some natural resistance to this pest, in a way that on the roots it produces on the outside like corky material, and the pest will eat only the cork material, whereas on the European variety we don't have this protection. And if you plant the European variety on its own roots and you have the pest, it will kill it. This is what happened in the 1860 when the vineyards, the major vineyards in Europe, were destroyed. And that's why we are adopting now this system of grafting the European variety on the American rootstock.